traffic here for just a second. We're going to get let pass through. All right, so can you hear me okay?
Yep, loud and clear.
All right. Can you hear the cars passing by, or are we good? We just had one
I can
pass
hear
by.
the cars. Yeah.
You can?
Yeah.
Oh, well. Okay, so here we're at the entrance of Dayton Urban Ground. We're like just a mile from downtown Dayton on Xenia and Hulbert. Our lot is a little less than 1/4 of an acre, and we have 1/10 of an acre in production. And we've been here almost 4 years now. So we're gonna go ahead and walk you through the gate. Some of you may know, like, we used to be at Garden Station, so like the gate is a relic from Garden Station. So come on. Kelly Shank, one of my interns, is manning the camera today. So we're gonna try and keep it smooth for you guys. All right, so coming in, I've got the way it's laid out. The entrance is on the south side. So, you know, good sun exposure coming in from the southeast. So that's why we laid out the hoops along the west and along the north, so they're not shading crops. And then we left the field up front, you know. All along the south wall and the east wall, we've got a 5-foot hedgerow. So we have a lot of perennial plants and pollinator plants for habitat for beneficial insects. And originally we had put the sheds here. They're not done yet. I'm really hoping if anyone has concrete, guys, that would be great. But because we used to have some trees here, and then RTA came and ran some lines and had to cut them down. So we were like, oh, we'll just put the buildings where there's shade, and now there's no shade. So they did buy us a couple small dwarf plum trees, but they're real little. So a little bit about the building. So they told us we could do 200 square foot without a permit. So we're doing 2. So, and they have to be 3 feet apart from each other and 3 feet away from the fence. And I didn't really want to weed all that. So I thought we'll just do a concrete pad for the whole thing. But there's some complications. We're doing radiant heat since we do year-round growing. So we should be insulating the buildings from the sidewalk. And then we put in trench drains because I'm gonna have like a little attached greenhouse, plant propagation and storage in here. I wanna have overhead sprinklers. And then this will be our wash pack shed with 3-bin sink, salad spinners, and a walk-in cooler. So I wanted to put in trench drains. So we have to have slope to trench drains, a curb under the wall, just so that we don't have too much water for the wall sill plate to rot. So still trying to get that figured out. So if anyone knows a concrete guy willing to tackle that, that'd be great. But that's gonna make a big difference because basically this is a training farm, incubator farm. So like Danielle is sitting out. Do you wanna wave? Danielle is, this is Danielle. Her and her mom were with me 2 and 3 years each, and they've started a farm 6 blocks down. And this will be infrastructure that they can use. And then one of my other interns from 2016 is back this year. She's trying to start a farm the other way down. So this will be like a incubator kitchen for farmers is the plan. So they don't have to all have their own separate infrastructure. We'll have like a walk-in cooler, propagation space, all this that we can share. So that's the plan for that. And then the field is in 6 rotation blocks. With 1 extra bed. So I've got 22 beds out here. They're 24 foot and they're 30 inches wide. So we're doing like kind of the standard Elliott Coleman market gardening type of scale, all with like wide, intensively planted beds. So what we got in here? We just ripped out, I had salad turnips in March and we ripped those out finally. I didn't think I needed to net those in March, but apparently I still did, because I had flea beetles get them in March even. So, but we just threw in some extra stuff. I have some fingerlings in there and some mustard and collards. And then we had some fingerling potatoes in the second one. We usually don't do a ton of potatoes, but I kind of felt with COVID this year, like maybe our staff would appreciate having some more staples. We basically just grow potatoes for staff, and then the fingerlings we can sell at market for a decent price, so we'll do that. And then basil, I do a whole row of basil here, and then also underneath all the tomatoes and peppers. But we usually have a lot more restaurant sales than we do this year, right? So I'm a little behind on basil sales. It's doing okay.
Lisa, here's a question for you.
Okay.
So says my potatoes were small this year. Any idea on why they didn't grow larger?
We haven't dug any but one set of potatoes, and we waited for those to die back. So it could be a lot of different things if they're waiting long enough. Usually you want them to flower or die back before you're digging them. So, and then, you know, some people have problems just with the drainage, especially if they have a real clay soil kind of thing. So it could be a lot of different things. It's hard to know without seeing what they're doing. But we haven't dug anything but just a half a bed so far. And it seems like a lot of our potatoes are going longer than I expected them to, and they still look great. So I'm just letting them go. But usually on one of these beds, we'll plant about 3 pounds of potatoes and get 60 to 100 pounds of potatoes off of one of these beds. So they usually do pretty good. So this first block is kind of just greens, just kind of a, you know, stuff that really doesn't care that much. So we put chard in that block, and then basil, and then whatever we want more of. And then the next block is brassicas. So kale and collards in these. And we do net them, although some of our netting has seen better days. And we did have to do some BT on them. And I just seeded another set of kale for winter to get it going. And then we had so much volunteer holy basil this year. It was crazy that it overtook our collard bed. But we did find a brewery that wanted to do something with it. We've done a lot of brewery collaborations, and we do have a lot of local breweries in the area. I don't know, we've probably collaborated with like 4 of them to do different recipes. So I'm curious to see what they're going to do with the holy basil. So, and then the next set is peppers, eggplant, tomatoes. I really don't do a ton in the field, and I'm really considering doing eggplant in a hoop next year just because the flea beetles love it so much. We do net it, and we do aerobic compost tea on a weekly basis, and it usually keeps it pretty decent for a while. And the peppers we do in the field are mostly hot peppers because they don't really care. They do well wherever. But the bell peppers definitely produce way better in the house. And then same with the tomatoes. I'm really thinking of just scrapping field tomatoes altogether. They do so much better in the house. So we're going to go around the corner here, just so you can get a look at this side of our house. Trying to keep distance from my cameraman person here. So in this house, it's cucumbers and ginger, turmeric, and sweet potatoes. So, and I've got it netted for cucumber beetles, so I don't want to mess that up too much. And the ginger is a little slow this year. It's just hard for us to start it in the spring. It really likes to be 75 degrees to sprout it, to pre-sprout it. So we don't really have a space for that yet. You can see we've got, let's see, this is our 4th succession of cucumbers. We're just direct seeding those at this point. We do transplant the first one, but we got hit pretty bad with spider mites this year. And I tried to do preemptively like some mite predators, but the ones that really worked for us well last time, Persimilis, I think it is, they really need to have a population to feed them. So it's like if there's low populations, they don't really do much. So that could have been part of the problem. And then sweet potatoes, normally we do sweet potatoes. They like the heat of the house, but normally we do them for our farm to table dinner. Well, that's not happening this year because of COVID. So we can't really, I don't know. I find that potatoes and sweet potatoes, you can't really sell for much to make it worth growing them as a market farmer, especially when you have such little space like we do, right? Just checking here. So we ended up doing the purple sweet potatoes this year because we can get a better price for those at market. So I just put in a overhead mister system in here. I just kind of felt like the ginger, being a tropical, would really appreciate that fine misting, but we just put it in like a week ago. So, and I don't have it on a timer yet. I'm not sure if I have open spigots, so we're still figuring that out. But I just turn it on by hand every once in a while. It's on the same line as my nursery, but I have it shut off so it doesn't go off as often. So that's that house. And we're gonna walk back down.
Hey, Lisa,
Huh?
here's another question.
Okay.
Is your compost tea viewable?
Yeah, we're gonna hit that on the way on the other side of the house. So we'll talk about it a little bit. All right, the next block we've got beans. So I had one set of bush beans already come and go, and then we reseeded with carrots, except I have a ton of like volunteer dill. And I don't think they necessarily do good together being in the same plant family. So we might have to like pull out the dill and maybe sell it so that the carrots can have some room. And then we had this bed of carrots was seeded early. It's not carrots anymore, but we just pulled it and reseeded it with bush beans. The center bed is black beans. So we usually do like one row of black beans, and once again, it's for the farmer's table dinner, which we're not doing this year, but probably we'll just divvy it up with the staff, you know, for a staple crop, just for food supply for the staff. But one of these beds, 24-foot beds, we usually get about 10 pounds of black beans. I have my alarm set for when these misters go off again. Something that really has worked well for us, see the Netafim misters here? I was doing those for the nursery already, and for evaporative cooling for greens, for like lettuce and arugula in the summer. You'll see that we grow them under 50% shade cloth, and then have these misters going off for like 2 or 3 minutes every hour just to cool it off, you know? So it really works. We have it a little longer for carrots. So germinating carrots, germinating spinach. Although, you know, I was having a hard time with spinach because you have to keep it moist, right? And was out at Ben Hartman's farm for a class, and he's like, oh, it's got to be 40 at night for you to germinate spinach. So I'm like, okay, well. But apparently he's been doing the misters now too, and is able to germinate spinach this time of year. So now I'm like, oh, well, maybe I should try it. But like I said, just having that on a timer, it makes it so much easier just to germinate stuff like that. Pretty much, I think carrots and spinach is what we use it for mostly. And then I have another bed. And I do, you may notice I have like some perennials, some flowers at the edge of each bed kind of thing on the ends, just for more beneficial habitat. And that's something that I picked up at Singing Frogs Farm, Napa Valley, California, just to have a lot of habitat. And I'm always trying to put stuff together to have more diversity. I mean, larger scale, maybe it's less efficient for harvesting and all that kind of stuff, but we're big fans of really increasing soil microbiology and diversity in the microbes in your soil. So like we do aerobic compost tea weekly. I've been doing more inoculants. We've been doing biochar in our compost tea to inoculate it for habitat for microbes. We're completely no-till. We just do broad fork aeration when we turn a bed over. So more diversity in plants in the ground is going to help with more diverse exudates, which is going to help with more diverse microbiology. So I'm always looking at what I can put together. So like I have some shallots down this bed of carrots right now.
Lisa, here's a question.
Uh-huh.
How do you get the great looking soil and keep it in the beds?
We do top our beds with like 1 inch of compost. And I think a lot of that is, you know, good soil is going to be lots of organic matter and lots of life in the soil, right? That's what's going to really make your soil great. So having all those microbes in there is huge. and then having a little bit of, like I said, we just top with a thin layer of compost. And we did, so like I said, I'm a fan of like the Elaine Ingham and Christine Jones and all the microbiologists, and I've been to Acre several times, and there's always been this debate between the chemistry type guys like Kinsey, like the Albrecht guys, and then the microbiology guys, and they can't really agree what needs to come first, you know, the life or the mineral balancing kind of thing. So we did a test on the same soil sample. We did a Kinsey test, which is Albrecht. We did a Haney test, which tests for like the organic forms of the nutrients and the inorganics. Our standard soil test is going to be pretty much just the inorganic nutrients that, you know, the fertilizer companies can sell you. So if you're organic, it really doesn't do much, and both Elaine Ingham and Christine Jones are pretty much of that opinion as well. And then we did a biological test on the same sample, so measuring, you know, the fungal bacterial ratio, you know, what the population is per square inch or however they measure that kind of thing. So we did that on all those tests on the same sample, and then we did some recommendations, and we're going to retest next year and kind of see what really does come first, the life, the mineral balancing. So stay tuned. But
we're curious, are you topping the beds with composted manure or plain compost each season? And I'm
right,
going to ask that, explain to us exactly when you're doing that.
Okay, so right now we are not using manure-based compost. We did for a couple years. We were getting from Fresh Air Farms, but like delivery for us, they're an hour away, so delivery was like $200. So we try and go in on another farm to split that. But we went back to a plant-based compost that we get donated from friends, basically. And one of the other big things for doing a plant-based compost is, especially in the hoops, you don't want a manure-based compost over the winter, especially because you don't get the rain to flush out all of the nitrogen and all the salts and all that kind of stuff. It's really easy to have a buildup of nitrogen in the hoops over the winter, and that's something Elliot Coleman addresses specifically, because we were having problems, and I went back through his books. I'm like, oh, he talks about this, you know? So basically, not manure-based compost in the hoops, and then flushing your beds through the winter, so you're flushing out the excess nitrogen. But it just, for us, our sources that we have, we've got more plant-based, and at this point, I'm not going to put manure-based in the hoops probably ever again either. We do, so when we turn a bed over, that doesn't mean we're turning the soil over. It just means we're changing the crop. So basically, we cut out the crop. That's something else that we picked up from Singing Frogs Farm. So basically, the longer you can keep roots in the ground, you've got root exudates. It's the sugary substance from photosynthesis that's feeding all your soil microbes. So you want to keep roots in the ground as much as possible. So what they do is they cut the crop off at soil level and then plant the same day. So what we'll do is we'll cut the crop out. We do pull the weeds. We'll broad fork the bed. We'll put down any amendments, like I do feather meal for something that needs a lot of nitrogen, like leafy greens. I do like Ohio Earth Foods Revita Pro. That's a little more balanced for fruiting crops and rooting crops. And we do azomite right now. That's pretty much it. And then we'll top it with like an inch of compost and plant right in that. So that's our process. If we have, like if I have lettuces going in back to back, I'm not gonna do that each time kind of thing. You know, something that's not gonna feed real heavily, I'll just plant it. But I should say that soil test came back, we're something like 13 to 15% organic matter in our beds. So it's pretty high. All right, walking down. So we did beans. The next was roots. So I've got carrots and leeks in here. We did have, I think we had carrots in the one that's beans right now, and we just switched it out. And as stuff comes out for the winter, I'm gonna probably plant about half of this in carrots. And then the other crops that do well in the field in the winter are kale and collards do really well. We've gone down to 10 below, just having 2 layers of fabric, agribon, and they do great. Carrots do great. We've had full-size cabbage do great, but they're not really worth growing on a small space because you can't sell them for much. So we just kind of did it as a trial, like January King is supposed to go down to 30 below, which is crazy. And then garlic, we'll put garlic in. So probably, I might actually put garlic in this one. Our squash, so this was interesting. We did some cover crops this year. We're doing more with like really diverse cover crop mixes, like a 12 species mix. That's another Christine Jones thing for really diverse root exudates in your soil. And she's seen results like building 8 inches of soil in a year just using a really diverse cover crop mix. So we did really small scale rolling and crimping, do it yourself, rolling and crimping on this bed. So this is rye, vetch, clover, and then there was a bunch of winter kill stuff in there that didn't show up in the spring that we basically just laid down. And I took a shovel and tried to jump on it to crimp it. And it kind of worked. It didn't completely work. So I ended up tarping it for 2 weeks. And then we just planted our squash in there. I was a little hesitant because I had read stuff about, you know, squash bugs love mulch, and they do. So we won't be doing that again. They really loved our squash in there. But just ways to trial no-till cover crops. There's just not a lot of people doing small market garden scale no-till cover crops. Some of the other beds, I think we did 6 beds with cover crops last year. And the rest of them, I think we just cut them all down, basically. Some of them we cut them down and used that as a mulch. Some of them we cut them down, like this one, we cut them down and I chopped them up like with a mower. And then we topped them with compost and planted flowers in it. I wasn't sure, you know, how much it was gonna pull nitrogen from the soil, breaking down. I mean, it was already pretty brown when we topped the bed with it, so it wasn't like it was a green. It should be more of a carbon base. So, but I figure with flowers, we didn't have to worry that much about the nitrogen if there was a lack of it. And it's done pretty well. So we did cut flowers at our market this year for the first time and did pretty well, but that's something I have a bunch of other friends that are kind of trying different no-till cover crop things, and we'll have a report eventually. And we do get a self-pollinating squash, and that's why it's netted. But like I said, the squash bug still got it. We didn't have as many issues with borers because it was netted. All right, and then I do kind of a rotation with squash and potatoes in the same block. And like I said, we added flowers to it this year. So these potatoes went in pretty early and they still look pretty good. So I'm like, thought we should have dug these by now, but they still look pretty good. So we're just gonna hang on and wait for a little while on them. And I've got some squash in there that I think what it was is we planted some squash out some of this bed was not squash, chard that overwintered. And then we did some transplants early spring, like March, and filled in the gaps with the transplants. And then we took some of those transplants and started a new bed for the summer crop of chard. But some of them got left behind, so we're still harvesting some chard off of that. Okay, so and then this is, I was talking about lettuces and arugulas in the summer don't like the heat, right? So these are under the mister, the Netafim misters on a timer going off. And we'll come back and see those. They'll go off in about 20 minutes. And then 50% shade cloth. And I'm doing the aluminate shade cloth. It reflects heat a little better. And you can see I've got it on the tomato house. I've got a 30% on the tomato house and a 30% on the cucumber house. Because once you get over 90 degrees, your fruit set is not as good, right? So, and then 50% over the nursery and 50% over the greens, lettuces. We've got way too many neighborhood cats around here. As one goes by. All right, doing okay?
Yeah, doing good.
Yeah, we'll get the sink on the way back. I just did a do-it-yourself hand washing sink, so we'll get that on the way back. Don't let me forget. We're gonna go in the tomato house. We're gonna try and get the tripod in here. I'm not sure if it will or not.
Here's
So
another
we do, huh?
just came through, Lisa.
Yep.
Request, will you talk at some point about data collection, what you do and how you use it in the training process?
Data collection. I think you'd have to be a little more specific on what you mean, like for the soil test?
Yeah, and Sue Ellen, if you are able to unmute yourself and you can kind of elaborate a little bit.
Is she there? I know, Sue Ellen. Thanks for joining us. I mean, with the soil test, if that's what she's talking about, I'm hoping that, I mean, I need to just publish those. The thing with soil tests is comparing them is always really interesting because everyone's got different labs kind of look different and all that kind of stuff. But at least it gives us a baseline. And I want to publish those. And I did send them to a bunch of my soil nerd friends to give me some feedback, but it's a lot to wade through. She's trying to give you a 360 view on the camera there. So hopefully it's not moving too fast for you. So all of our tomatoes, we do lean and lower, hard pruning. So like this one starts here and ends up here right now. So we're probably already about 20 foot. So they'll all be like 30 foot by the end of the season. It's a little different doing them this way because we have such diversity in here. It would be a lot easier if this was all the same variety, for sure, because they would all grow pretty much at the same rate, but they're not. We've got at least 30 varieties in here. So I've got cherry tomatoes down the center because like when we were doing tours, we'd bring the kids down the center and they can like munch as we go kind of thing. And then I've got the full-size tomatoes on the outside of the bed. And I am doing these really close. Like a lot of people are like, those are way too close. I think they're 11 or 12 inches apart. And then there's 2 rows in a bed. And they go around in kind of a racetrack pattern. But the reason we can do them this close is because of the compost tea. We do a weekly aerobic compost tea as a foliar feed. And both Elaine Ingham and Michael Phillips talk about basically that's a bacterial barrier on your plants that protects them from diseases. And we've seen it. I mean, when we were at Garden Station, we were like 70 feet away from the community garden plots and they'd be covered in blight, right? And ours were like beautiful and green. And the only difference was, well, I mean, the hoop house, but the compost tea makes a really big difference. And we'll go by the brewer so you can see that. Trying to think what else I was going to say. I do have some basil underneath. We threw in some alyssum underneath. And that was more important when it was open so the pollinators could get, well, it is open. So what was it? 2 years ago was the first time that we screened a house. We screened the cucumber house for cucumber beetles and it made a world of difference. And then we rotate the cucumbers and the tomatoes each year. So then that second year, the tomatoes were in a totally screened house and our fruit set was way down. So yeah, tomatoes are somewhat self-pollinating, but the pollinators really make a big difference. So this year, the outside is screened, except we have the vents at the top are open. So our fruit set is way better this year. I do need to put chicken wire or something in those vents though, because I was sitting in here one day and a squirrel's trying to get in my upper vent. So they have figured out how to get in here, which is really annoying. But we do have to pick stuff They don't really bother the cherries, but we do have to pick the big tomatoes. Excuse me as I pull suckers off. We have to pick the big tomatoes before they're totally ripe so that the squirrels don't bite them first, kind of thing. So, and the other thing about we're doing a little differently is I'm pitching off the length of the leaf so they aren't overlapping as much because they are so close together. So you can kind of see that the leaves are all cut off, suckers are off, and then even on the fruiting branch, you know, I'll pinch off the tip of that before it gets too terribly long. And then we strip the stem from the bottom up because they produce fruit from the bottom up. So basically you're stripping all the leaves and all of the spent vines that are already done fruiting. And I usually go up to, you know, like this one I've only got, well, I've got 2 on there, but I stripped them down to the next full set. So that also is really helpful in the fall because since we do winter growing, we need to get our crops in the ground by like the first part of October in order to be full size by the 10-hour day in mid-November. So it's really hard for us to like rip all our tomatoes and cucumbers out because they're really profitable, right? And get our winter crops in. So what we did last year for the first time is we just transplanted arugula and lettuces underneath our tomato vines because they're already stripped. So you can get light in there. Like we'll have to take the basil out before we do that and probably most of the alyssum. But it really worked well last year to get a good head start on that. We even pruned up, I've got beets under my peppers right now. They're slowly coming out, but we pruned up the peppers even, like took the leaves off the lower foot of the pepper plants so that we could get lettuces planted under there for winter. And it worked well. And I was actually gone. I was teaching at a conference in Washington in mid-November last year and did not expect a hard freeze. And it did. And I didn't really have my people ready for that. So like our tomatoes died, but because nothing got covered, the heat didn't get turned on or anything. So all the tomato vines died, but the greens underneath it looked great. So it worked really well. So let's go and look at the peppers real quick.
Lisa, before you step away from those tomatoes, we have some relative questions.
Okay.
So, Jacqueline Slater says, my tomatoes are currently at 7 feet and my stakes are 8 feet. Will it harm my plants to cut back at the top?
If you cut the tips off, it forces the fruit that's on there to ripen, but it's not going to put new fruit out below the top, you know. They produce fruit from the bottom up. So usually people are not going to top their tomatoes until like right before they're pretty much done to get everything that's still left on the vine to ripen. So, I mean, if there's any way to like tie it to the top and just kind of like support it, we'll take a look at how these are. I've tried different supporting methods for tomatoes before. Can you turn around and look at one of the tomatoes and how the string is wrapped around it? Sorry. Okay, so right now I am just wrapping it around there. So like she could do that, tie a string to the stake and wrap it around there and try and support it further down. I kind of did that on, I put some cherry tomatoes over the peppers and now they've gotten so long I don't want them covering the peppers. So I just tied them up about 5 feet off the ground and then they're running horizontally above the peppers. So that might be an option.
Okay. And regarding Jacqueline's question, Susan asks or says, mine are huge too and not ripening. I'm wondering if cutting back at the top might help with that.
It would ripen them for sure. Are they inside a hoop house?
And Susan's microphone doesn't work.
I know stuff in the field takes a lot longer to ripen than the house. So, you know, it's like everyone else is like, how are yours so ripe already? Well, it's the heat of the hoop house for sure.
Yeah, she says, nope, not inside a hoop house.
Yeah, that makes a big difference in how fast they ripen. I mean, it's just going to take time out in the field. And hopefully we don't get cold for too long. Although tomatoes, like they not really liking it above 90. So.
How do you get rid of, this is Sherry Breckler, how do you get rid of powdery mildew and little brown flax like bugs under the leaves?
Powdery mildew, like since we do the compost tea, we don't have as many problems with that. That's going to be airflow. So, you know, I don't think Sherry's got a house. So that's going to be making sure you're pruning the leaves up to get a lot of airflow in there so that it doesn't stay too wet. Okay, that's going to be a big thing with powdery mildew. A lot of people talk about doing a milk kind of spray and that works. And it has to do with, oh, I'm trying to think of the word. I'm blanking on it. I've got that in my soil class. There's like different things, there's different things that the microbes really like eating. So there's something about the milk that helps with the powdery mildew kind of thing. So like I said, we don't have it too much because of the compost tea, doing it weekly. And what was she saying about bugs? Did she say something about bugs too?
Sorry, I was on mute. She was referencing little brown flax like bugs under the leaves.
Like aphids? She knows me. She can send me a picture. We had some aphid issues over the winter, and I'm trying a new thing. We just have done it for a week now. I forgot to bring the powder and put it in my tea, where we're basically brewing like a fungus it's a soil fungus that will take over the bodies of aphids and whiteflies. So we're trying that out. It is organic approved, so I'll keep you posted on that. But that would be nice if we could take out your aphids and whitefly problems with just that. And it basically, we just brew it in our compost tea and do it weekly with the compost tea. So, all right, we're trying to get out of this jungle here. Anything else on tomatoes?
Nothing else on tomatoes. I will just let you know this is from
We're getting late.
To follow up on her data collection question.
Uh-huh.
At some point, what she's wondering is about yields year to year.
Oh, yeah.
And how different crops respond to conditions you provide for them. Like, it's all in your head, but what about the learning process of your trainees going forward?
Right. I mean, I keep some records, like of things that it's a one-time dig, like sweet potatoes and potatoes. You know, we weigh those, but I haven't really done things like leafy greens and stuff like that.
And
not a records person. I'm awful at that.
I like the question though, just as general, something OEFFA could focus down on for growers. Yeah. Hey, we're all admiring your clean shredded mulch between rows. Where do you
Hold on. We were in close quarters there, so I remasked. Sorry, what was that?
We're all admiring your clean shredded mulch between rows. Where do you get that?
Oh, it's just wood chips.
Okay.
Like the ones in the tomato house? Is that what you're talking about?
I would guess so. That's when it came.
Yeah, the tomato house, and then out here we have wood chips. Between the beds in the field, I do straw or fabric. But yeah, Mission to Mary, the farm just 2 blocks down, they've got a really large space. So they've got some tree companies that just dump stuff there. So they've got mountains. I call it Mount Chip. We go to Mount Chip and load up buckets and come mulch. Usually once a year, I'll remulch the whole place.
You know,
usually before a tour.
I had seen, and I don't have a link to put in the box. I'd have to research again. And also, you know, I know it's not going to be like certified mulch, but certified organic, but there's a program where you can get with tree companies for mulch delivery.
Yeah, there's like a website or something for that. I think I've seen it, but it's like, you've got to have people in your area that have actually signed up for it.
That's right. Exactly. It's a bit of a
Yeah.
co-op, and I don't know if the timing. I was interested though, and this is reminding me I wanted to look into that.
Yeah, and we used to have tree companies dump stuff at Garden Station, but it seemed like the tree companies come and go so fast. You know, you'd get one lined up and they're good for a while, and then they disappear, and you don't have any wood chips, and you find another. You know, so
So
anyway.
Jacqueline's saying, where did you get yours again? Because she's worried about getting poison ivy in the mix or other stuff.
Oh, no, it's just a tree company that comes and dumps them, and normally they'll dump them if they're already in the area. So I don't know. You know. Um,
Jacqueline said she signed up for that thing we were talking about, but she said they couldn't guarantee it being clean. I was
right.
worried about that too.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, we probably take the risk on that too. I mean, it sits for a while before we grab it, so it definitely heats up and there's ash and stuff.
Now,
So
Sherry Breckler's saying my tomatoes have really slowed down producing.
if it's hot, that's going to be it. Like I said, they don't set fruit or pollinate above 90 degrees, and you know, the pollen basically becomes sterile. So that's part of it too. So that's why we have shade cloth on our house to try and keep it from getting too hot in there. So the back of the house here, I just want to show you, we had a couple small pear trees at Garden Station that they were small enough we could take with us. So we brought them, and then the elderberry. And last year we got 10 pounds of elderberries off of that. This year it's having some issues though. So, but it's kind of nice. And then on the other side of this, you can see there's some canes coming over the fence. I've got all these blackberries that we had just planted at Garden Station. We moved all those down here, and raspberries. I think the blackberries actually died, but the raspberries stayed with it. So another thing with the hedgerow, we do put food out there for the neighbors. So like that whole one down that side has got strawberries in it. And you know, when they're in season, the kids come every day to check for strawberries. I've got a couple families that come forage for cherry tomatoes all the time. And we don't really pick the raspberries. They're just there for whoever kind of thing. So it's just kind of nice thing to have for the neighbors too. They've been really good to us. Like these guys ran power and water for us until we hooked ours up. I'd go and knock on the door and plug in an extension cord or turn on the water kind of thing. And the guy next door, same thing. He ran extension cord out his window for us for a while kind of thing. But yeah, and we have potlucks for the neighbors. Well, not this year, but we did kind of thing where they'd come out and we'd grill out and all that kind of stuff. All right, now we're gonna turn it around the other way. Now you can kind of see our Vermont Compost Fort B here. That's our potting mix. I really love it. We get in on the, what is it, Great River Organics group order. So they get like 10 to 20 trugs of that, 2-yard trugs. But so I want to have really big starts. So I want some potting mix that's got some fertility to it, right? And part of that is we are so small. If we can transplant in big starts, they don't sit in the bed as long. You know, we can get more crops per square foot per year if we do a lot of transplants and big transplants. The other thing, if they're big, they're going to be healthier. They're not going to have as many pest and disease problems. They're going to shade the soil more, you know, so no less weeds. So I use 50 trays. We'll see those in a second. So, but Fort V is a nice, well, it's probably the best potting soil that I know of right now. So lots of good nutrition. This is our compost bins. We're not real good about turning them though. I just don't have enough hands, enough people. I have looked at a couple other things like a Johnson Sioux. It's kind of a aerated compost that's static. Yeah, there's also ways to pump air through them kind of thing, and that would help them heat up so that they'd kill. The big thing with ours is we're not killing enough weed seeds. The good news is most of our weed seeds are like mustard, you know, or edible weeds. You have chamomile everywhere, you know. So, but yeah, need to figure out something better for compost to keep it under control more. But, and then we do have some beds along the fence. It's a mess down here right now. Oh, looks like the mister's getting ready to go off. So we'll be in the house when the misters go off so you can see them. But I do put peas down the fence, snow peas, and I just put a bunch in the germ chamber. So we'll get a bunch of snow peas in for fall. I haven't done that before because usually we try and do pole beans, but the tree in the neighbor's yard has gotten so big that it's just not enough light here for the beans, just don't do anything. Same thing, there's not enough light. It gets shady real fast for this house, so I don't put this house in rotation with the summer crops anymore. This is all just greens all the time. Now, you might notice that the plastic's on half the house. So in the winter, the plastic covers the whole house. But since this is our shed, this is where all of our tools and our workspace are. I don't want all that getting wet all the time. So we have the plastic covering the workspace, and then it's off of the green space with 50% shade cloth on and the misters. So here we're gonna look at the tea here. I'm gonna mask up because usually you're gonna get a little closer. Oh, you can kind of see the insulation is still in this half of the house too. You see the green insulation in the north wall. We put that in the winter, just since we're growing in the houses all year. But this is my tea brewer. I've got like, I upscaled to like a, what is it, a tea bubbler or something. It's got a lot more airflow going through it. Basically, you want 1 gallon per minute of airflow for the size of the container. So this is 15 gallons, 12 to 15. So I've got 15 gallons of air per minute for the air speed. And she'll have to show you here. Well, no, here's my like air pump. It's back in here. So my compost tea recipe, I just have it on here. Basically, I've got Neptune's Harvest Fish Seaweed Emulsion in the water, and then in the tea bag. You kind of see the tea bag here. It's kind of nappy right now. It's like a nylon tea bag, which holds up really well. These are all from Tea Lab, and we're a distributor for them at the shop. It holds up really well, but the openings are a little too big. So like my biochar is too fine and it comes through the opening. So I do have to filter all of my tea before I put it in the sprayer. So for that, I have been using cotton bag. You know, it just filters all the particles out so they don't clog the sprayer, and we'll just have to wash it. But I used to use a cotton bag for the tea bag, but it sits in the water too long and then rots it too fast. We were going through cotton bags like crazy, but just straining it out before we put it in the sprayer works fine, it holds up. So in the bag is worm castings, and we've been using the guys in Greenville. I'll find the bag. And they use Elaine Ingham's soil food web test, so it's like a balanced fungal bacterial ratio, which is kind of what you want, because if you can get a little more fungal than most vegetable production, you don't have as many weed problems, because they're there to basically remediate the soil, take it from more bacterial to more fungal. And yeah, if you can already have a little more of that, fewer weed problems. And so worm castings, we've been doing biochar too, and that's habitat for the microbes. Basically, it's like a condo, they love it. If you don't inoculate your biochar before you put it in the ground, all the microbes in the ground will like flock to it. So you want to inoculate it so that it's already populated. And that's it. We used to do molasses, but Elaine Ingham finally nailed down why she wasn't a fan of it, and it's more of a bacterial food. So if we want to get a little more fungal, we took that out. So that's that. Maybe you can get a shot of this is the air pump. So, and like I said, that's Tea Lab. You can write me but we're also a distributor for it, so I can sell it to you too. So we cleaned off all the tables for you. But this is So I put the potting mix in here, and we fill our trays here, our flats, and then I cover it up when I'm done. You can get a shot of this. So this is that Fort B, that Vermont Compost Fort B. I like it a lot. And then we do put inoculant in it too, like I put a mycorrhizal inoculant. Here, let me. So right now I've got Myco Apply. So I'll put that in when I'm doing my, every time I fill it up, basically. I don't have the other stuff in here. So I don't have a walk-in cooler. I have 2 fridges right now. This was a glass door fridge. It's empty right now that I had at the market, but the market inside is closed because what we used to do is we'd harvest until the fridge was full, and then we'd run it down and fill the fridge at the market, and the market was open 4 days a week. But now that it's not open, we bring the fridge down here because we don't have enough room for greens, especially off season, like in March and April, our greens are slamming, right? So I really need another fridge, but once the walk-in cooler's done, it'll be a 5x10, so that would be amazing. See what else we got in here. So I got my trays. This is just the bin for bags and stuff when we're bagging. Got a scale, got another scale. And everything else is just kind of a mess right now. I've got some more half fans I was gonna put up in this house, but we weren't wired yet. And we just pulled wire, finally. I had a friend in town that's an electrician, and we finished pulling wire this weekend. I gotta get some outlets and just ordered another heater. Oh, I should have talked about the heater in the houses. I've got these tiny little, I think they're Mr. Heater electric heaters that I got on auction for like 30 bucks. I was like, what the heck? And they've held up well. They're like a 3,000 watt heater. And we just put it on 32 degrees when it's gonna be like below maybe 15 degrees or something. And then if we get snow, I crank it up to 40 or 50 so it sheds the snow better. But so we'll put another one of those in here. Going down. Then we've got our washing machine, salad spinner, and drying table with the fans. The only thing we really wash, it's technically hydrocooling, is our lettuces. And we pick those super early in the morning, like at daybreak, so we can get them all in before it gets too hot. Basically, we dunk it in some big trugs of water, pick it into a mesh bag, spin it, dry it, and bag it, and it'll add like a week of shelf life. And then our shed, we've just got tools and stuff and a couple little sheds here, and it's kind of a mess here right now, but hopefully eventually once the big sheds are done, we'll have a lot better, more organized storage, because right now there's just not a lot of room to get stuff organized, unfortunately. Oh, the misters are just starting to go off. Those didn't go off yet, right? Okay. The misters usually go off around now. They kind of are on a cycle, so I was hoping we could catch them. This is the nursery right now. So I've got the misters in here. And then I've still got some plant sale plants hanging out, and then all of our harvest trugs are on a shelf. And then I'm not gonna go in the cucumber house. You saw the other end, but you can kind of see this end, and you can see the turmeric. This is the first year for turmeric. It's a really pretty crop. If you can kind of get closer in there. Yeah, the cucumbers are kind of gone crazy, but the turmeric are the big leaves there in the outer bed. First year for that, it's looking good. And then we have the 50% shade cloth here over the nursery. I do have my brassicas all covered with Protect Net because we have flea beetle issues. Although my my new growth on my eggplant looks pretty good. Not sure why, and it's not been covered because I figured it was too late for it. That's all left over from the spring. I can't bring myself to get rid of it. Well, I'll go turn on the water if it doesn't turn on here in a second, but we'll look at our sink. So this is new. Actually, look at the wash table real quick. So I had seen at Ben Hartman's place, he had some of these shelves. These are just shelves for these. I've got a couple more sets, and then some of them, if they're broken or, you know, bent or something, he just has them hanging under like an awning, like on a porch for his spray tables. I don't have an awning, so I just made a stand for it, and it's not bad. Just 1-inch PVC, it's pretty strong. So we used to just have a crate on the ground to hose off root crops like carrots and stuff. So this is a much more comfortable way to do it. And then I had been thinking about doing a hand washing sink for a while. And after I did that, I'm like, well, I can do that for the frame for the sink. I had one of these that I got for like $5 on auction, and just found like a foot pedal. So your hand's free to turn the water on, right? And right now it just is going into a bucket, and I have to dump the bucket. And then I've got, for gaps, I've got the required paper towels and the paper towel dispenser. And I've just got Dr. Bronner's. I had an extended, like bottles, big bottles at the bottom, but it's not pumping very well. So I think I'm just gonna have to attach the bottle. But I had like a Dr. Bronner's in one, and then a hand sanitizer in the other. But for now, I just have a Dr. Bronner's. So it's biodegradable. Yeah, pedal. So that's been really great. I love having that. I'm going to go ahead and turn on one of the misters. I know where that one is, so let's look at the carrot ones. I'll turn those on real quick. So you can see how they are really light fog. But, you know, if you run it for about 3 minutes, it covers it pretty nice to keep it all moist for germination. And like I said, on the lettuces, it's more just, it evaporates real fast for a cooling effect. All right. I think that's about it. Are there any other questions? I gotta grab my water.
If for some reason you do not have a microphone, well, I guess I should say, if you don't have a chat box, but you do have a question, you're very welcome to try unmuting yourself and asking out loud now that Lisa's sort of done.
Except I lost my water bottle.
And I'm not seeing any other questions come through the chat box. Thank you, Lisa, so much. This has been a really great and informative tour. Jacqueline had said, bless you for being a great neighbor back when you said you were sharing strawberries with the neighbors. I could not agree more. We are so proud to have you as an OEFFA member and the Market Gardening Chapter president of OEFFA's Market Gardening Chapter. So if you would like to be on the chapter's email list, you can do so by joining OEFFA as a member for as little as $10 a year for students, $35 for individuals, and $50 for family or family farms. And you all are welcome to join in OEFFA's Market Gardening Chapter virtual happy hour tomorrow. Online, it's at 8:30. You can.
It's Tuesday. Oh, it is Monday. Sorry.
Yeah, already. So what we talked about today, see how everyone's been working through pivoting markets during COVID, and just generally log in to chat and support one another. Again, the login details for that chat are available on OEFFA's event page of our website. and I'll put a link in the chat box. So thanks everyone for attending today, and trying to get this copied and pasted for, oh, we do have one question. Okay. Is it too late to plant kale? Oh, this is a good one. Too late to plant kale and broccoli for winter?
Probably broccoli. Broccoli takes a little longer. Kale is fine now. I mean, you might have to cover it if it gets too cold, but if it gets cold gradually, it's fine. Like I said, we went to 10 below with kale out in the field with 2 layers of agribon. I don't have any agribon out here. It's like a spun fabric, and each layer adds like 5 to 10 degrees. But I think broccoli's probably got too long of a season. I don't do broccoli just because it takes so much space and it takes so long, and you can't sell it for much, so it's not worth it in such a small space. Mm-hmm. I should say too, so you can always write me on Facebook, Dayton Urb and Grown page, or DaytonUrbanGrown@gmail.com if you have other questions. If you're in the area, we will take volunteers, like masked as individuals. I've had requests for groups, and I'm not doing groups this year. But
one other growing question, Lisa, did cucumbers slow down also because of heat?
Yeah, they'll abort, actually, is what they do. Is like they'll put a little tiny cucumber out, and then it will just shrivel up and turn yellow. Here, let me grab one. We're getting there. So it puts them out, but then they shrivel up and don't do anything. And a lot of times that's because of heat. You know, they abort the cucumbers. I mean, they keep on putting them out, but, and I think they actually, if I remember right, they like it cooler than tomatoes even. So a really good resource for that is the, what is that? The Greenhouse Growers Manual, the guy from Johnny's did. He's got crop descriptions with temperature ranges on all of them, kind of thing. Anything else?
I don't see any more questions in the chat box.
Okay, well, thanks for joining us. I kind of feel like it might have been a little late. Oh, stay tuned too. Like, we didn't get a lot of advance notice. We just had too many technical things figuring out. But we do have some other folks hopefully lined up to go. Like Mission to Mary is trying to get a date down, and Living City Farms in Akron. And Mandy was talking about doing one. So hopefully we'll be doing at least 2 or 3 more tours, if not more, like this summer. This was kind of like the trial run to make sure it could work. So hopefully it all worked for everyone, and it wasn't too jarring of motion. You could see well enough, you could hear well enough, all that kind of stuff.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and all the friends at Dayton Urb and Grown.
Cool. And just if you want to give us feedback on the quality of the video and audio, that would be great too. So just send a note to either Christy or me so we can make sure that we get the technical details working better for each one. Okay?
All right, that's a wrap. Thanks all.
All right. Thank you, Christy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, bye-bye.